All right, have a seat, guys. Welcome to City Church. Everybody doing okay? Good start to the morning. We could all just go home right now. It'd be a pretty good day. Would you agree? But we're not. Here we go. Okay. We are continuing in our Advent series. As always, you can go back on our YouTube channel and our podcast and pick up the work that we are doing. As a reminder, when we kicked off this series, the word Advent simply means arrival. It is the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas, traditionally where Christians celebrate and anticipate the arrival of Jesus and let that narrative saturate our stories as we live into this season. So, Merry Christmas. Glad you're here. Again, if we haven't met, my name is Drake. I'm the pastor here. Before we get into it, our mission, the reason we exist, the reason we started City Church 6 years ago is to help people find their way to God from where they are. And we do that by practicing the way of Jesus together in Boulder. So what that means is no matter where you're walking in on your spiritual journey, you're loved, you're safe, you're welcome. We're really glad to have you here. And our desire is simply to help you take some next steps in your relationship with Jesus, whatever that might mean for you. And so we hope that's experientially true for you, both from like a stage, sense of the word, but also, just from the encounter you have in this community. So thanks for being here. 2 weeks ago, we kicked off this series talking about gratitude, right on the heels of Thanksgiving. Heels? Toes? Which side? Heels. Yeah. So one side of the foot, somewhere in there. We kicked off with gratitude. Last week, Kyle was teaching on love. Let's go. Put your hands together for Kyle. He did a great job. And today, I am talking about joy. Now, Advent is a season that is meant to, and listen, no matter where you are on your spiritual journey, no matter what you know about, I didn't even know what the word Advent meant. I met Jesus right before I turned 16, knew very little other than that dude changed my life, and I wanted to follow him and tell other people about him. So no matter where you are on this journey, lean in today because I think God has something for us. Advent is a season that is meant to awaken our hearts to the anticipation and gratitude around the Christmas story, reminding us of the breathtaking reality of Emmanuel, God with us, of this Jesus that Danielle just wrote about, who came to save his people from their sins. It's easy to read that story and it not touch our hearts. It's easy to know that reality and not be moved by it even a little bit. You know what I'm talking about? God's overwhelming, undeserved, radically generous love is meant to wake us up, but you know just as much as I do, to set us free, to renew us daily, but it's so easy to drift, to be asleep at the wheel. It's so easy to be distracted into oblivion, away from the life that we long for, away from the people that we long to become, life happening to us, the priorities that we truly value, taking a back seat. That is the life that is easy to live. Would you agree? It's so easy to just get busy with life, even in the Christmas season, and miss out on the things that matter most. And so that's why we don't just want to hear the Christmas story. We want to let it intersect our stories, which is why we have taken the intentional 4 weeks during this Advent season to do exactly that, to take teaching and practice and community, all saturated in the environment of the Holy Spirit to form us into the people that God created us to be. Now, one practice that recenters us on what matters most, one practice that helps lift our eyes above the hurry, helps us get out of that distraction, helps us wake ourselves back up. You guys ever been driving at night, like midnight, 2 a.m., everything's dark, and you start to have to do like the shake your head and like slap your face and roll down the windows and stick, you ever been there where you got to wake yourself up? Well, the good news is there's some spiritual disciplines that actually help wake us up to the things that maybe our heads know, but our hearts aren't moved by. And one of those practices is the practice of generosity, which is interesting because that's kind of what, even though the season is saturated in consumerism, one of the pitches of even commercialism is the idea of generosity in the season of Christmas. But for Christians, we're motivated entirely differently through generosity because our generosity is motivated by God's generosity. That our generosity is birthed out of the reality that God would give the most lavish, expensive gift that anyone could ever give, and that was Jesus himself. That his own body would be sacrificed in our place for our sins to give us new life. Pretty wild, right? And so as followers of Jesus, we are motivated to lean into the practice of generosity, one, to reflect the love of God, but also because it forms our hearts in a certain direction. Rather than being consumers and selfishly turning our lives in on ourselves, we can practice generosity and give away our time, our energy, and our resources in such a way that it forms us to actually love people around us. So here's my pitch, the Christmas offering. Ta-da! Here we are. You know what's really awesome is I'm also, while I talk about joy, I'm also talking about cynicism today. And all of you just looked at me with a glary eye. Lean in. This is for your hearts, I promise you. This year, our City Church Christmas offering, we do this annually. It impacts 3 key areas. So as you lean into the practice of generosity, as you consider how God might use your generous giving to impact the world around you, here's 3 areas that our City Church Christmas offering is going to be impacting between now and December 31st. It's going to missions and church planting around the world. Come on. Super cool. We have church planters and feeding centers and missionaries all over the world in the West that we get to partner with and pray with, and it's going to go to increase support for them, which is awesome. And again, keep in mind that 10% of our budget already goes to all of this external giving. So all of our missions and church planting is already supported by 10% of everything that comes in here at City Church. It goes right back out the door. And so the Christmas offering goes on top of that to provide additional support to our missions partners, church planters, and orphanages. Sound good? Okay, that's number 1. The second area is just going toward generosity initiatives in our city. How many of you guys have been a part of a community night here in Boulder? 3 of you? Well, awesome. Well, good. All right, for the 3 of you, how was it? Yeah, okay, all right. So we do things like rent out local bars and provide drinks on the house and invite people who maybe would never come with you to a weekend service or to a weekend gathering to a third space where they can encounter the love of Jesus in the community in a safe place. And so we rent out like the Rayback Collective or Upslope or whatever. So generosity initiatives like that, and Easter, Halloween, all kinds of things. So it's going to go toward generosity initiatives. Sound good? And the third thing it's going to is our Here for Good campaign. Many of you know we started City Church back in 2019. And our church, amazing, a year old, raised $500,000 toward permanence in a building here in Boulder. How cool is that? So we don't own this building currently, but we have high hopes that God has long-term plans for City Church. The good news is we can be City Church anywhere, and so we are renting this facility, trusting God in His goodness that He'll provide that timing when it's ready. But a third of the Christmas offering is going toward what we called our Here for Good campaign, and that was toward permanence and a building for City Church long-term. Sound good? All right, so those are the 3 areas. That's pretty good, yeah? All right, so I'm asking each of us to take 3 simple steps today. If you're a guest with us, welcome. Really glad to have you. Listen, this is primarily for people who call City Church home, that this is their family, and this is for followers of Jesus. Jesus does not expect people who are not following Him to act like it. So while you're absolutely welcome to be generous, Jesus is not after your wallet. He's after your whole life. And it includes your wallet. In fact, it's deeply tied to it, but know that that's not what the church is about. And so just you have permission, okay, to just hear that what this family is doing and not participate. So I'd invite you to do 3 things if you're a follower of Jesus and part of this family. Pray and ask God how He's inviting you to participate through this generosity initiative in December. Reflect and consider how God has used City Church to impact your life and how you can continue to partner through generosity to extend the mission that God has here to Boulder, the West, and the world, and then to invest. Give to the Christmas offering as we work together to make a difference in Boulder, the West, and the world. Now, 2 quick things. If you've never given, if you don't actively give as a follower of Jesus financially, then I would say just start with any amount. Anything and everything helps, but know that this practice is about shaping your heart first. That Jesus talked about money more than anything else. 25% of Jesus' teachings were attached to money and the heart. It's not accidental that the practice of generosity forms us into certain kinds of people. And so I would just encourage you, if you don't actively give something, give anything. Start anywhere. I remember when I first started following Jesus, I'm mowing lawns, and I make $20 mowing a lawn. And then I gave $2 to the church. I remember learning. And early on, I started to trust Jesus in a little. And over time, I've had the ability and the privilege of continuing to trust Him. The second thing is if you give regularly here at City Church, first of all, thank you. It's because of your radical generosity that we get to do what we do here. Put your hands together. Come on. So grateful for you. And I would just encourage you, like for my family, to consider giving above and beyond your normal tithes and offerings, whatever you normally give. Consider giving above and beyond that. So this is not in replacing your normal giving, but in addition to. So my family and I, we give over 10% of our income from both our car wash business and then our salaries here and all that. We give over 10% of our income to City Church. And then additionally, we give to other organizations outside of City Church. But then we are praying actively right now alongside of you. God, what is it that you want us to do? Everything we have is from you anyway. I read it yesterday, James 1. Every good gift is from God. Anything good I have, I don't really get to lay claim to it. There you go. But rather, God, what do you want me to do with what you've given me? And so we're actively asking, and we're going to invest. And just keep in mind, we're never going to ask you to do anything that we would not do ourselves first, okay? Everybody feel good about it? Okay, very good. City Church Christmas offering, there you go. You can give on our website using the Christmas offering drop-down, or you can give in the envelopes in the seat backs in front of you. Our goal this year between now and December is to raise $20,000 to those 3 initiatives that I spoke about a minute ago. Sound good? All right, put your hands together for how God's going to use that. It's going to be good. Okay. Now that you've turned your ears off and you're not listening to me anymore, let's talk about joy up against cynicism. We live in a world full of cynicism as a first response and a default attitude. Would you agree? Cynicism is everywhere we turn. I looked it up. The definition of cynicism is an attitude characterized by general distrust of the motives of others. Much like how you all have been looking at me for the last 10 minutes while I talked about the Christmas offering. Cynicism, just an attitude of general distrust for humankind. And what a great spirit to carry into the world. Would you agree? Man, we could just use some more cynicism around here, right? It's so helpful, builds other people up. Listen, this exists. This is just the default expression in the world we live in. And the weight of cynicism and hurry also cultivates a demeanor of languishing. Anybody ready for the languishing definition? Languishing. You're I don't even know if I feel it, but I feel it. Languishing. Languishing, Adam Grant says, is a sense of stagnation and emptiness. He says when you're stuck in languishing, it's not despair. It's somewhere in between despair and joy. This middle no man's land where it feels as if you're muddling through your days, looking at your life through a foggy windshield. Languishing. We live in a culture of cynicism, and it perpetuates a demeanor of languishing. Would you agree? If you could see your faces right now, you would agree. I'm just letting you know. If you're happy and you know it, tell your face. All right. We live in a world saturated in cynicism, and I get it. Listen, I'm just having fun, okay? Carrying a demeanor of languishing. Merry Christmas. Here we are, right? And it's interesting, friends. It's one thing for the world to be like that. In fact, I don't even know that we should be shocked. There's lots of reasons that the world around you would carry a spirit of cynicism, distrust, and languishing, muddling through life, just trying to find anything to light up joy. But it's another thing altogether for the church to carry that same disposition. Would you agree? I think that's one of the big challenges when it comes to people considering whether they want to follow Jesus or not. There's a lot of people in the world that claim to follow Jesus, and they're just grumpy, right? I heard John Tyson say this week. He said we got to remind followers of Jesus that cynicism is not a fruit of the Spirit. That is not, some people carry that as a badge of honor, and that is not it. Listen to Dallas Willard on this conversation. Check it out. How many people are radically and permanently repelled from the way by Christians who are unfeeling and stiff and unapproachable and boring and lifeless and obsessive and dissatisfied? Yet such Christians are everywhere. And what they are missing, listen, here's what they're missing, is the wholesome liveliness springing up from a balanced vitality with God's loving rule over their life. Spirituality, wrongly understood or pursued, is a major source of human misery and rebellion against God. That is so on point. You know why following Jesus sucks for some people? Right there. It's wrongly understood, mispracticed. Man. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about wrong understanding and wrong pursuit today. Can we do that? You see, the good news is today, friends, so that you and I, specifically as followers of Jesus, can fight cynicism and languishing and recover joy, carry joy in our lives through the discipline of celebration. So let's deal with understanding first. Listen to A.W. Tozer here. And I'm going to get to the scriptures that Danielle read in a minute, but I got to do some pre-work, okay? So hang with me. A.W. Tozer, one of my favorite authors, says it this way: what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. When you think about the most important thing about you, put whatever you're going to put in your bio when it comes to Instagram, right? Or what is it? The most important thing about you, A.W. Tozer argues, the most important thing about you is what comes to mind when you think about God. So here's the question. What mood do you think God is in when you go to Him? Again, this is not just intellectual, let's waste our time here. You're not here on mistake. What mood do you think God is in when you go to talk to Him? When you approach Him, when you attend church, when you consider the Christmas offering, when you open up your Bible, when you pray, when you're having a great day or a bad day? What mood is God in? Does He have His arms crossed? What do you want? I'm kind of busy running the world here. Right? What mood is God in when you come to Him? Do you think that the way that you think about God affects how you follow? You think those have a correlation? Absolutely. How I think about God informs how I read the scriptures, how I gather in community, in small groups and in weekends, how I carry my faith where I live, work, and play, how I respond to the Christmas offering, how I do other spiritual disciplines, how I interact with my neighbor, how I think God is looking at me influences how I do all of those things. Is it obligation? Is it invitation? Is it joy or is it drudgery? Friends, this is an invitation for you to evaluate your own hearts. Here's what I have found, is my head can know the right answers to every question I just asked, and my heart can be far from that reality. That is what we're dealing with today. Listen to C.S. Lewis following up. Now, this is cool. This is about 30, 40 years before Tozer's quote. Listen to this. He says the opposite, which is kind of cool. How God thinks of us is not only more important, but infinitely more important. So Tozer says, right, the most important thing about you is what you think about God. C.S. Lewis goes back a step further, but actually, what informs your thinking about God? Well, how he thinks about you. How do we know how God thinks about us? Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, born of a virgin, living a perfect life, dying the death that we deserve, being buried and rising again to give us new life. How do you know? Jesus says, you want to know what God looks like? Look right here. And so he points us back. C.S. Lewis says, how God thinks of us is infinitely more important. It is written, he's speaking of the scriptures here, that we shall all stand before God, speaking of Judgment Day, the end of your life. We'll all stand before him, we'll appear, and we'll be inspected. Our lives will be evaluated by God. The promise of glory is the promise, almost incredible and only possible by the work of Christ. He's making it clear. We stand before God, and without Jesus, we're hopeless. But check it out. Because of Jesus, that any of us who really chooses shall actually survive the examination, that we have anything left standing as we're standing there before God. We survive the examination, find approval, and please God. So the question is, hey, do you think God's disposition towards you, end of your life, you stand before him, is he pleased with you? Is he smiling over your life? What's his disposition as he evaluates your life? Let's say it ends today or you get a good 95 years. That's what he's talking about. And he said, man, if it wasn't for Jesus, I don't know how it's going, but here we go. To please God, listen, to be a real ingredient in the divine happiness, to be loved by God, not merely pitied. Some of you think like God only puts up with you. Not merely pitied, but delighted in, as an artist delights in his work, or a father in a son. It seems impossible that God would look at my life and be delighted over the story that it's telling, the disposition of my heart, the responses to my family, the things that no one else knows. It seems impossible. A weight or burden of glory which our thoughts can hardly sustain. But so it is. Mic drop, C.S. Lewis just walks off the stage. But so it is. It doesn't make any sense that God would look at you and be delighted in you. But he does. Wow. Now, two things get in the way of this conversation. Number one, our pride. God should look at me and be delighted. I'm a pretty dang good gift. My pride gets in the way. Or guilt and shame. God could never love me. If you knew my story, if you knew what I did. So two sides of the same coin. But C.S. Lewis is arguing, friends, this is how God looks at you through Jesus Christ. This is the reality. The question is, do you believe that? Do you believe that that is part of your story? Because, listen, friends, I think about my kids when they create something. The joy that they have, it doesn't have to be right, just amazing. Yeah, Dad, look at this. And they're so proud, right? They're just beaming with joy over, right? We were pulling out Christmas ornaments and putting them on a tree yesterday. And there's all these, every first grade, second grade, kindergarten, all these different ornaments that they made over the years. And the boys are pulling them out like the master, like Picasso. Look at this. Dad, look at this amazing fingerprint snowman I made, hanging it like just for all to see. They're so proud of what they created, right? Honestly, do you see God as beaming with joy, delighting in you? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Friends, listen, if you can't wrestle this reality down in your heart, there's no version of following Jesus that leads to joy in life like we're talking about. This is the great struggle of the human condition, to believe the love of God and then to believe it again the second day. Now listen to John Ortberg landing the plane here for us. John Ortberg says, we will not understand God until we understand this about him. God is the happiest being in the universe. God knows sorrow. But the sorrow of God, like the anger of God, is his temporary response to a fallen world. Those emotions are not absent. But listen to this. That sorrow will be banished forever from his heart on the day that the world is set right. Joy is God's basic character, his default disposition. How about you? What comes to mind when you think about God? What comes to mind when you think about what God thinks about you? This is deep, guys. This is heavy stuff. It's really important. Let's go to Luke 2. Luke chapter 2, Jesus' birth. Look what the angels have to say in response to Jesus' birth. An angel of the Lord appears to them, and the glory of the Lord shines around them, and they were terrified. And the angel said to them, "You better be afraid. Look busy, guys, because God is on his way, and he does not look happy." That's from the BSV translation. Now listen, that's silly, but the reality is some of us behave as if that's how the Christmas story showed up on the pages of history. Get busy. God is not happy. You better look like you're being productive. Listen to Luke 2, the words of Luke from the NIV here. The angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. Listen, I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths, lying in a manger." And suddenly, check the response from heaven over this announcement to these shepherds. Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared with angels, and they gave him a golf clap. Well done, Lord. Well done. Wow, this is something. Praising God and saying glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those whom his favor rests. Listen, I think heaven's going to be uncomfortable for some people, right? It's going to be way more of a party than you are realizing, and I think we're going to struggle with that. Now listen, good news, great joy. This is the disposition of the good news showing up for the human condition in a world of cynicism, in a world of misery, in a world lacking hope, in a world lacking joy, in a world languishing under the weight of trying to be lovable. God declares favor over anyone who trusts in Jesus, returning them to the original dignity that they were made with. St. Augustine said that the Christian, the follower of Jesus, should be a hallelujah from head to toe. How far is that reality for modern Western Christianity? One of the interesting things about joy as we talk about it today. Now listen, 2 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, I taught on Philippians 4 on joy, rejoicing always through the practice of gratitude. So these all work together. You can go back and pick that up. The practices of rejoicing. But one of the dangers is we live in one of the most educated cities in America. You know that, right? Like 80% of the population, I believe, maybe 60%. Every stat's made up anyway, but it's in there. I read this once upon a time, but a majority of our population has a master's degree or higher. And so Boulder in particular is kind of this melting pot of just like brains on legs. And so we're wildly intellectual and not very emotive. And one of the dangers in following Jesus and religion in general is people get scared of emotionalism, right? But it's just funny that like at church, we keep a little serious and we're here for the Lord, right? Or whatever. I don't talk like that, but some people do. And we just have that very serious composure as if, again, God's like, you better not step out of line. When all of heaven is a celebration. And we find ourselves wrestling with this unique dance. Here's what's funny, though. We're not afraid of emotionalism in other places in our culture, right? Like I think about people losing their minds at sporting events, right? Like grown men crying at sporting events when their team wins, hugging a total stranger, taking their shirts off, painting their bodies, right? I think about but those dudes totally serious on Monday, right? But at a sporting event, or I think about like a Taylor Swift concert, dude. People losing their minds. Swifties, right? You know what I'm talking about? I'm not one of them, but I know some. And listen, there's no shame, right? Like all out for Taylor Swift or like whatever. Man, we have all kinds of things that we do get emotional over. Hugging, dancing, jumping. All right, so I read an article this week on why men are more likely to cry at a sporting event than any other area in life. And it's actually, listen to this. Men are 4 times more likely, said the article, to cry at a sporting event than any other area of life. And here's why. Number 1, men in particular feel a permission for emotion at a sporting event compared to any other area of life, right? Every other area, men are not supposed to be emotive. You're not allowed to express your emotions. But at a sporting event, there's kind of this understood reality that you can cry over that. That's an acceptable reality right here in this stand, now that you're full of beer. So, you have these moments of permission and emotion, which is interesting, right? So there's permission at a sporting event, for example, that maybe men don't experience elsewhere. And this is men, I'm just speaking, generally from the article I read. Another reason that men are more emotive at sporting events is because there's a shared identity and belonging. So it's not just this solo individualism, this John Wayne mentality of trying to be your best man, but there's actually support, there's identity and belonging in community. So then there's emotion that comes from that. And then in addition, there's shared vulnerability, which is also not permissible elsewhere in a normal, Western man's life. And so you have permission for emotion, shared vulnerability, shared identity and belonging, and then years of investment, right? The longer you're invested in something, the more your life is attached to it. I read this article, and the very first thing that came to mind is, guys, should the church not be 10 times better than that? Should there not be years of investment, shared vulnerability, shared identity and belonging, and permission for emotion in the church? What? Guys. So I'm reading this and I'm like, guys, when we think about the response of heaven and what God is doing in our hearts, there is permission to follow Jesus. Well, we don't want to get too emotional here. I mean, God only defeated sin, death, Satan, the devil, offers redemption, power, new life to anyone who asks to trust in him. I mean, we don't want to get too excited about that. He only gives us power now to live the life that he created us to live. We only get to walk with the creator of the universe. We only get to pray and partner with him for the transformation of the world around us. I mean, yeah, we should probably chill it out a little. Right, guys, right? You tracking with me? It's a little comical. Now listen, at the end of the service, our band comes up. We have prayer team members at the front and the back. One of the things we're starting to do while we gather is giving people space to respond. You can go for prayer. You can go take communion. And also something else we're doing is just opening up the platform here at the front to respond to God's activity in your life. Again, we get so intellectual sometimes that we just get stuck up here. God's activity, he might be speaking to you about something. He might have already put his finger on something, but we just keep it up here and we walk right out of here and nothing about our lives change. We're whole people that are meant to respond with our whole lives to God's activity. And so we're beginning to open up the front of the platform, not just to pray with someone, but to even come and respond and pray by yourself. Some churches call the front of the church building like an altar. You heard that language before? We don't use that language because it's a little confusing, and for people who are not followers of Jesus, what the heck are we talking about? So just like the front of this platform, but some churches call it an altar, and they'll do like an altar call, like to where after the sermon and during the music, people can come and respond. Well, here's the language. I'm just giving it to you, okay? An altar was very simply in the Old Testament a place where sacrifices were given to God. Romans 12 says, as followers of Jesus, give your lives as a living sacrifice to the God who loves you. And so does it not make sense, friends, to not sit here in our intellectual minds and absorb everything good and beautiful and true about the good news of Jesus Christ and then respond with our whole beings to what God is doing? Does it not make sense to maybe raise our hands? Does it not make sense to hit our knees? Does it not make sense to listen to God's activity in our lives and come and kneel in response to say, God, you're the most important thing, and what you think about me is the most important thing. That's all that really matters. And I'm moving my body in response to your activity in my life. You guys tracking with me? Listen, you need permission. Now listen, everyone's at different places. So for some of you, though, it might be wildly emotive to stand and worship and flip your hands up like this. I would say, well done. A posture of openness and receiving to declare your neediness in front of God as you sing songs. Great. But we continually are trying to create an environment where people can respond to the presence and the work of God. So lean in today, friends. Back to Luke 12. Luke 2. How do we get here? Good news of great joy for all people. How does that become your default reality? Rather than carrying cynicism, rather than languishing, living self-absorbed lives, how do we live lives full of joy? How do we get it? How do we keep it? How do we live it out? Look at Jesus in John 15 here. These are the words of Jesus. I have told you this. Now this, what is this? John 15, go read it for yourself. John 15 is the start of the discourse with Jesus and his followers before he goes to the cross. Imagine Jesus and his best friends sitting at a table, sharing a meal, and he's downloading everything of most importance in that moment that he can give them before he goes to the cross and dies for the sins of the world, okay? That's the environment. And he started it by an invitation to trust in and abide in him, to make your heart's home in Jesus. It started with relationship. He said, if you will focus your life on abiding in me, resting your life in me, then your life will produce the appropriate fruit. Speaking of one example, joy. So I have told you this, what the invitation to be with me. So that, why? Why have I given you this invitation? So that my joy may be in you. Whose joy? Jesus' joy in you. Jesus is God in the flesh, the happiest being in the universe. And he's saying, I have told you these things. Listen, you want a joy-filled life? Here's the answer. It's not 15 practices, a really good sermon, some good songs, and a good devotional. It's not the raise that you're after, the relationship you wish was restored, and the grades that you want at the end of the final. You want joy? I have told you these things, how to be in a relationship with me, how to walk with me intimately and daily, how to know my voice, listen and respond so you can live life to the full. I have told you these things so that my joy might be in you, and that your joy then would be complete, whole, perfect, spilling out of your life. How do we get this? How do we keep it? How do we live this way? Friends, you already know the answer. If you've been a part of this family for any amount of time, what does it mean to follow Jesus? Be with Jesus. Become like Jesus. And do what Jesus would do if he were you. But it starts where? Be with Jesus. Friends, do you believe Jesus' words today? Is this his actual desire for your everyday life? Is it possible to live in this way regardless of the circumstances? Keep in mind, what's following John 15? The cross. Not exactly the best day. But Jesus has joy in the middle of that. He's not promising a happy weekend with the bros. He's promising joy, a disposition of your life, a deep-seated happiness regardless, even in the midst of unideal circumstances. Listen to C.S. Lewis here one more time. Here's C.S. Lewis. If you want to get warm, stand near the fire. If you want to be wet, get into the water. If you want joy, power, peace, eternal life, you must get close to or even into the thing that has them. This is the invitation. Be saturated, Jesus says, in my spirit by trusting in me. Let my spirit fill you in such a way that it bubbles up, not only on the inside, but it literally is so full that it spills the banks of your life. It is uncontainable. Now, a few observations around joy as we begin to close our time. Because I don't want you to get stuck in emotionalism. I don't want you to keep listening through the lens of cynicism and say, oh, well, this is all just like, a version of like, put your happy face on, come to church, act like everything's okay. No, listen. How do we live this out practically? Listen to Thomas Aquinas. Man cannot live without joy. Therefore, when he is deprived of true spiritual joys, it is necessary that he become addicted to carnal pleasures. Here's Thomas Aquinas' perception. If you're struggling with sin and like just beating yourself up, guilt and shame, and running your narrative, you keep doing the things you don't want to do, he's not saying you need to try harder, feel a little worse about yourself, get your life in order. He's like, you're just not experiencing joy. You're settling too low. There's so much more available. The joy of God can be so much in your life that those things just don't taste good anymore. That's what's available in Jesus Christ. It's pretty amazing. One of the core issues of our struggle with sin is our failure to delight in God, to settle for far too less, not more. Jonathan Grant, listen to Jonathan Grant on joy. Neurologists have shown that while most brain development stops sometime in childhood, the brain's joy center. Did you know you have a joy center? You guys seen the Inside Out with all the levers and all the emoting, right? You have a joy, that exists. It's biblical. It's crazy. You have a joy center located and observable in the right orbital prefrontal cortex, and she has blue hair. It is the only part of the brain that never loses its capacity to grow. When the joy center has been sufficiently developed, it regulates emotions, pain control, and immunity centers. It guides us to act like ourselves. It releases neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. It is the only part of the brain that overrides the main drive centers. Did you hear that? Joy. Your joy center is the only part of your brain that overrides the other main drive centers: food, sexual impulse, terror, and rage. Without sufficient joy strength, we spend the rest of our lives trying to fill the deficit. Holy crap. Wow. Do you see, friends, the invitation from Jesus that my joy, this is not passive theology that you staple somewhere on the wall of your mind and you go and live your life. This is experiential if you want it. And that's the key. Now, Richard Foster wrote this book called The Celebration of Discipline. The Celebration of Discipline. And it's a book on spiritual practices. It's phenomenal. Highly recommend it. Listen to what he wrote about joy. Joy is part of the fruit of the Spirit. Often I am inclined to think that joy is the motor, the thing that keeps everything else going. We cannot continue long in anything without it. Without joy, everything loses momentum. Would you agree? Think about learning an instrument, right? You like learning piano, learning a violin or whatever. You can put in the practice for a minute, but without joy, are you ever going to become an excellent musician that can lean into the music and actually feel it? Can you get there? Right? Like anything, sports, a career, relationships, right? You can start and force it for a little while, but you need joy to actually maintain the thing and keep momentum going. Would you agree? Right? How much do we give up on in life because of a lack of joy? How many people quit their jobs because of a lack of joy? How many people bail on community because of a lack of joy? How many people bail on relationships and get divorces because of a lack of joy? Now the issue is we blame others for our lack of joy. And Jesus is giving us a clear invitation. My joy can be in you, and your joy can be complete. But this falls and rises on you and I. It's available, but it rises with us. Richard Foster, one more time. The decision to set the mind on the higher things of life is an act of the will. Here's the rub. That is why celebration is a discipline. It is not something that falls on our heads. I wish it was. That'd be sweet, right? Really good sermon, and you just have 7 days of joy. It's not something that falls on us. It is the result of a consciously chosen way of thinking and living. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. Kyle talked about it last week. When we choose this way, the healing and redemption in Christ will break into the inner recesses of our lives and relationships, and the inevitable result will be joy. Good news of great joy for all people. So friends, if joy is the motor, my suggestion this morning, let's just give it some gas, okay? Can we do that? If joy is the motor, give it some gas. How do we do it? Be with Jesus. Become like Jesus. Do what Jesus would do if he were you. You want to get out of languishing. You want to get out of cynicism. You want to find life to the full despite your circumstances. Lean into what is available to you. Sometimes I wish I could show up and give you something new, like revolutionary. It's the same old stuff over and over again. Why? Because Jesus gives us the base foundation for building a life full of the Spirit and joy. So wake up to what's right in front of you. So, a couple of next steps. Practices for the season of Advent. Number 1, be with Jesus daily. Be with Jesus daily. Listen, friends, this is not mundane reading the scriptures. What's God's disposition towards you? When you get up early in the morning, you stay up late at night, you open the scriptures, you get out a journal, and you sit with the God of the universe, how is he looking at you? Who is on the other side of that moment? Getting alone with Jesus. And for some of you, friends, listen. For some of you, it might very simply be taking 5 minutes in the morning, getting rid of that terrorist in your pocket, make it sit somewhere else in the room for a minute. Quiet your heart and mind and say, Jesus, help me to receive your joy today. Fill me with your joy today. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. You don't have to stop there. Then read the scriptures. Fill your mind with the narrative of what's true about you and others and about God. And then end the time with, say 3 things you're grateful for. You don't have to be a follower of Jesus. The stats are out. A practice of gratitude cultivates a life away from depression and toward joy. It's wild. I read an article this week, 20% increase. A month straight, practice of gratitude. Five things you're grateful for. Every day for a month straight, you'll have a 20% increase in joy and happiness by the end of that month. It's not even spiritual. You have a joy center. But Jesus has more for you. Be with Jesus. So listen, we have Bibles in the seat backs in front of you. We have tools on taking next steps on our website, out in the lobby. There's a whole next steps table out there. Your city group leader can facilitate this. It's okay if you get into the Bible and you've been bored with it. But listen, friends, I heard John Tyson say it last year. He said, if you're bored with your relationship with Jesus, so is God. So is God. That's not what he has for you. Number 2, practice biblical generosity with special attention to the church and the poor. You want to increase joy? Give it away. You want to increase joy? Practice generosity. Don't live with a scarcity mentality, a generous mentality. All that I have is from God. How can I steward this well for the sake of others? If you don't trust the church, cool. Give anywhere else. It doesn't matter. My family and I, we give here at City Church. We give to Compassion International. Last year, we adopted 2 kids on a monthly feeding program and education system that have our boys' birthdays. So they share birthdays. That way, every time we celebrate their birthdays, we're celebrating them. They write letters back and forth. And so we give here. We give to Compassion International. We give elsewhere. It doesn't matter. Practice generosity. If you've been giving consistently in the same way for the last 10 years and it's not touching your heart, then take it up a notch. Let it touch your heart again. That's where we moved into Compassion International last year. God was like, hey, increase your generosity past your comfort level. So practice biblical generosity. Give to the Christmas offering, whatever, okay? Number 3. When people ask you why you are the way that you are, tell them. Tell them. Assuming you're full of joy. If you're grumpy, I didn't have my coffee this morning. Just give a good answer. But if you're full of joy, if people are compelled by the way that you're living. This morning, Susan had the privilege of baptizing Alicia, and part of her story was that Alicia was compelled by the faith that she saw in Susan and how she carried her life in Jesus, that her invitation was worth considering. May we live in such a way, full of joy and the power of God, not of our own joy. This is Jesus' joy in and through us, that people have to ask, why? Why are you the way why are you being generous? Why do you go out of your way? Why do you see me? Why do you care? Why? Don't be shy. Be bold. Give them the reason for your generosity and the reason for your joy. Man, I don't know. Jesus changed my life, and it just kind of bleeds out of me. It's wild. And if you're not there, if you're like, man, that is not me today, ask Jesus to fill you fresh with his Spirit, wake you up to his love, and fill you with his joy. Let me pray for you. God, thank you for my friends here. Thank you for your love for us. Thank you that the Christmas story is not sentimental and emotional. It is real. It's the most real and true kind of story. And it is meant to intersect our story right where we are. And I pray that my friends in the room feel seen and known and loved by you. That on the other side of our gathering today is not a God disgruntled and disappointed, but a God longing with affection who desires to save us, to set us free. He is tender, he is compassionate, he is slow to anger, and his love is steadfast and unrelenting. May they know the love that God has for them through the demonstration of Jesus Christ, God in the flesh. All that we do is in response to your love, not to gain it, not to earn it, but in response to it. And so for my friends in the room who are not followers of you today, God, I pray that they would hear the invitation loud and clear to trust in Jesus, to believe that he is who he said he is. He can do in our lives what he said he would do. Jesus, would you save me and give me new life? And would their hearts erupt with joy this morning, just like heaven erupts with joy over any person who trusts in Jesus in that moment. For the rest of us who are followers of Jesus, God, would you wake us up fresh and new to your love? And would it change how we carry ourselves, how we think about our days? We move from languishing to full of joy. But will we realize that it also lands on us? It does not land on our heads today. It is a life cultivated in the way of Jesus through the spiritual disciplines. Help us to hear you, to fight for time with you in the scriptures and in prayer, getting alone with you, being with you, Jesus, so that your joy might be in us. The practice of generosity, the practice of community. Help us to lean in and partner with you in our formation and stir our hearts like only you can. Amen.